Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our filmmaker, Nicholas Agrinzone. Nick, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, man.
I got to start from the top. When did you know that you wanted to make films?
Honestly, since I was a kid, my dad had this old camcorder. I forgot what it even is now, but he had this camcorder and I just found myself really interested in it. And I've always been a creative kid, so I would literally force my like three other cousins to make these weird films. I would physically write out the scripts, film on, I don't even know, I wish I knew where they were now, but I've just been always interested in not only documenting things, but also kind of making my own reality when my reality around me didn't make sense.
It's interesting you say that because when I was little, my dad was the one always recording house parties and things like that when I was a kid. Because I'm one of those kids that grew up on VCRs and things like
Yeah.
that. So I still own a VCR to this day. I have all VHS tapes from when I was a kid as memory, things like that. You just have to keep around. But I never thought in a million years that years later or 2 decades later that I would do the same thing that my dad did, but instead of making house parties, I would make films and things like that. So it goes to show you how the generation connection in which your parents would do one thing and then you go on to do something else, but much more different, and you elevate because any parent will want more for their kids than they want for them. So it's interesting that we have that similarity.
Yeah,
So you
man.
so you're from Connecticut, right?
Yep.
Right. And so what was the wait, hold up, sorry. So the kind of projects that you make,
Hmm.
what are the kind of projects that you like to make?
So right now I'm kind of in this self documentary phase right now. I think over time I kind of went through this self improvement journey, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that. And even though I've been doing it for a while, there's still a lot of things that I'm learning as I'm going on. And I'm only 22, so I feel like there's, so much of life to experience. So I'm just kind of documenting what I'm going through, except in a more cinematic way. Like for example, one of my recent films, like a month ago, was running away to Los Angeles. That was the first time, not only that I went to Los Angeles, but it was the first time I really flew by myself, like in an airplane. I'd always had someone, with me, like family or friends or stuff like that. So it was my first time really pushing myself outside of that comfort zone. And it's just stuff like that. And I think in the future, I want to get more into, again, like I was saying before, creating my own realities. But for now, I'm kind of just documenting experiences as I go and then making it more artistic and putting my own little twist on it.
Interesting. And it's good that you're doing this now early on in your career. I'm 30 years old. I'm 30 going into 31. And I understand the fact of that when you're traveling, you like traveling with other people. And for me, it's always been that way. But then by the time I was 27, I wanted to do more things, but I just didn't have someone reliable to go with me. So I didn't step out of my comfort zone in terms of traveling on my own until I was 28. So that was back in 2019, which it was an amazing year from start to finish.
Yeah.
So starting in 2019 all the way to now, I began to taking more risk in terms of, traveling alone, because what people might not understand is when you're traveling alone, whether it's to make movies, go to film festivals, or just to explore adventures, it makes you stronger as a human being when you
Yeah.
travel alone. It makes you stronger. And if you don't do anything like if you don't drink, if you don't smoke and all those things, then that's even better for you because it shows that you're more responsible being on your own. and economic
Yeah.
and financially wise as well. So I'm glad that you're doing that early on in your 20s. As for me, I had to wait until I was 27, 28 to do it. And it's been a great decision that I decided to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's still young too. Where did you travel to?
the first time that I traveled alone was to Chicago, summer 2019. And Chicago is an amazing city. It's another city just like New York, Los Angeles, that is
Yeah.
good for the arts, but it's more. I don't want to get too much in detail to that because I've only been there once, so I can't speak about it like the way
Yeah.
New York is because I'm a New Yorker. But Chicago is an amazing city. I'm glad that I went in the summer because the weather was perfect. And I just went over there for sightseeing and explore a whole bunch of things. It wasn't to record videos or anything like that. That didn't happen until this past year in 2021 when I went to Puerto Rico by myself.
Oh,
I
nice.
Yeah, I shot a short film over there called Mini Vacation, and then I went to Vegas the following month, which I shot another short film there, which it will come out in May of this year. So
Yeah.
stay tuned for that one. I'll
I
tell you
got
more
it,
about that
man.
later. Yeah, so and both of these trips, Puerto Rico and Vegas, I went by myself. And the great thing about it was that I have a phone tripod with me, so therefore I don't have to bother anyone to take pictures of me or record me videos. I do all of those things on
Oh,
my
that's the
own.
best.
So yeah, so I that's something that I recommend filmmakers and artists in general that if you want to make a project by yourself, it's challenging, but if you want to do a short film by yourself, do your research, buy your tripod, record your phone. Like there's no excuses for 2022. You have all the resources there. So yeah, that's my story about that. But back to you. So speaking about mental health, depression, if you're comfortable, share us the audience a little bit more about what you've gone through dealing with those things.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say those feelings kind of crept in during high school, but it didn't start getting really bad until like the summer of 2019. So I had just left college actually. I was going for live television production, but I knew that's not the area in film in which I wanted to go long term. Um, so I left school. I was kind of doing my own thing with I was doing music videos, commercial shoots, and I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't I was just lost, honestly. So the depression came in really, really bad. I like could barely get out of bed in the morning. I really wasn't being productive. I was literally just existing. It felt like I had no human emotion. I feel like that's a lot of what people go through with depression. It's not just like these heavy emotions. It's the lack of emotion. It's um yeah. So obviously my mental, physical, emotion that state was like an all-time low for me. And so I just kind of looked in the mirror one day and I was like, "Yeah, okay, you got to fix this. If you wanted to make film your full-time thing, you gotta get on it." So um ever since then I've been kind of on this self-improvement journey. I've been meditating, journaling, and even though these are practices that have helped me a ton, they're not end all be all solutions. Like I literally just made a film called How I'm Finding Myself, where after Los Angeles, coming back to Connecticut, I felt in this really, that's not so much depressive, but just like a lack of creativity. I was just such in a creative rut. I had no idea what to even do. So I literally just documented my experience of trying different things and setting a new discipline to help me get out of it. And I won't spoil the ending, but mental health it's a journey. It's not something that you could just fix like that. So that's my journey, at least, with it.
And how do you feel today, as a person? How do you feel today?
I feel pretty good. I mean, obviously, I know I have long ways to go, but I think just the change that I've had within the past 2 years in terms of mindset and being more open and accepting, and just I had a lot of limiting beliefs back then, and oh, I couldn't do this. I only had to follow this like one structured path, and I just really was pretty, I don't know how to describe it. I just was following everyone else's path, but for me now, I feel I'm finding myself more and more every day, and even though I'm not exactly where I want to be, I'm making progress, and that's all you really can do as a person in general.
And yeah, and that's so important. Like not to, there's this thing where, and us human beings, we tend to do this, but we keep fighting it over and over. Like we could go on social media and see our fellow artist or friend that is doing much better, or I should say they're taking things up a notch. And
Yep.
then it puts you in a situation where you want to rush through your journey. And that's important for us because you don't want to rush through the journey. You want to take your time, your time will come. Just focus on one thing at a time. Don't worry about what the other person is doing. Focus on what you're doing first. So I know that we like us, I would say guys like you and me, people
Mhm.
who are independent filmmakers, writers, etc. We're in a great position. Why? Because we're telling our own stories. We're writing our own stories our own way,
Exactly.
and we don't have a studio or somebody breathing down our neck saying, no, take this, change that. Like it's good to get constructive criticism and feedback,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, only you know what's your vision. And if you can see that someone is not respecting your vision or your storytelling, then on to the next one. So, but I feel that you're on a good track. You know exactly what you're aiming for, and we're in the building block stages, so we're constantly learning, and you never finish learning.
Yeah.
So, and
And
then
like
go ahead.
building off of what you were saying, I think I know creative integrity is very important to me. And like you were saying, it's obviously great to get feedback and learn from those experiences, but I've heard so many stories about like in the industry of people compromising their morals and values. And this is something that and I'm sure you appreciate as an independent filmmaker, is that you don't have to give that up, and it's like you were saying, it's in your own terms. And you know um yeah, for me, I'm a very principled person, so I have certain boundaries where I don't want to cross in order to make it. And it's probably going to take me a while. Like that's the reality of it. There's certain hierarchies and things in the film industry. If the more independent, the more boundaries you have, it's a little bit harder, but I wouldn't trade that for anything, because like you said, you nothing can beat your creative freedom. Nothing.
Yeah, and we're fortunate that we're in a time, in an era that we have our resources. We have the smartphones, we have um, internet in general. We have apps like Zoom that you don't necessarily have to meet up with someone to do a project. A person could be living in Atlanta, in LA, and you're from Connecticut, and you could just easily network with that person. And if they want to, you guys can make a project through Zoom and things like that. So anything is possible as long as you use, what you have around you. And yeah, and that's something I feel like the more you do things out of your comfort zone, the more risk you take, the more your initiative. And that's another thing. I feel that there's I've met some artists, filmmakers, writers, etc., that they have the talent, but they don't market themselves as often as they should be. And
Right.
I feel that that's something that a lot of us filmmakers we tend to lack on. We don't market our stuff properly because we're just thinking of one thing only. But no, like we have social media. Yes, social media is a gift and a curse, but it's the number one thing that you can use to promote your stuff. Like I remember about like let's say a year ago, I just thought I just stick to Instagram because I feel like to have so many social media apps like it could be draining, and I know how much of a pain in the ass social media is. But then I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? I'm putting out a project. after project after project.
Mhm.
So let me get back on Facebook. I had to start on, I started a new Facebook page. I started a new Twitter page. I started a new LinkedIn page. Things that I had about 6, 7, 8 years ago. I started off basically freshly new, and I just dedicated into promoting my business, my work. And it turned out to be the best decision. And now recently I got TikTok, something that I was hesitant about it,
Yeah.
but it has been a blessing. So therefore, with all those machines there, I could spread the word of my movies as much as possible. So that's something that I recommend you and any independent filmmaker, that just use as many social media accounts, apps as much as you can, and just market the hell out of your film, because you're not gonna see it right away, the results, but it's gonna come. It's gonna come.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what kind of genres? No, 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 not what kind of genres. What genre that you haven't done yet that you would like to give a try?
A genre that I haven't done. Hmm. I'm thinking like a rom-com. I don't know why. I feel like most of them are pretty cheesy. Like when you think of rom-com, it has that association. But I think I don't know, I would want to do something where it's like a dark comedy, but it's also like a romantic thing. Like you're following the stories of both of them as a couple, or even individually, if they're, depending on how you want to spin it, if it's a good relationship or if it's not such a good relationship. Yeah, I think a dark rom com would be something I would be open to. I definitely haven't done anything like that before. So,
So, when I think of rom com, like, yes, I do agree with you that nowadays there's a lot of them that are cheesy and not well written properly.
mm,
But I'm a sucker for rom com. I'll say that because
really,
I've done a few I've done some romantic films. So yeah, I'm a sucker for that. As long as it's done right, you know.
mm,
So I like a lot of, like, some of my favorites are 500 Days of Summer, When Harry Met Sally.
mm,
I, my mind is going blank right now, but those are the top two that I always look at as rom com movies that I like the way it's written.
mm,
So it doesn't always have to be that, boy meets girl, boy meets girl, whatever, etc., etc. Like, you don't always have to end it with oh, he got the girl at the end. It doesn't always have to be that way. So
yeah,
when I think of movies like 500 Days of Summer, it doesn't show you that typical um rom com, cliche that we often see. So
right,
if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I think it's on I think it's on Hulu. But yeah, just Google it, 500 Days of Summer, and it'll show you like where is it streaming.
yeah,
But definitely, it's definitely if you want to look for an inspiration, you could see that movie, When Harry Met Sally. When Harry Met Sally, it came out in 1989, and it's on HBO Max. So yeah, I think the Philadelphia Story, which is a movie from the 40s,
mm,
that's another one that you could take a look at. It's also on HBO Max. So, but yeah, as long as you look at the classic, and yeah, I'll say mostly the classic rom-com movies that are good. You can learn from them, but just as long as you bring your own flavor into the project,
right.
and that will turn out to be great. But so you write and you direct them. Which one do you like more?
I think for now, I like directing more. I like a lot of my stuff is, like I was saying, it was kind of more self documentary style. So I'm not writing too much. It's more I'm getting back into it. Um, so I'd say definitely directing because I just see a vision and I get to create it, and I just love seeing that come to life. And I think writing, I used to do it, like I said, when I was a kid, and I kind of forgot how hard it was. So because I was literally looking at my computer trying to write a script yesterday, and I was like, I'm just drawing a blank. I think I need to get better at this, where I just write to write, and then if I don't like it, then revise it. Obviously there's different drafts, revisions, but right now I think directing is definitely what I'm more so trying to focus on right now.
Who are your top 3 or top 5 favorite directors?
All right, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Wise, and actually this is a director that I very, very recently got into, actually because of a Facebook post. Ironically enough, his name is Sean Baker, and I think a lot of his morals and principles sort of align with mine. He's a very minimalistic filmmaker, which I very much consider myself as well. I think there's a time and a place for bigger productions, but being an independent filmmaker, I love just the feeling of having it feel like a home film. Just I personally believe great art doesn't have to be this grand theatrical thing. It could just be just like what we're doing. We're creating amazing art. I've seen some of your work as well. Like, we're creating great films with minimal resources, and I don't think that really determines the art. It just determines the talent of the person. But anyway, he released this film back in like 2015 called Tangerine. I haven't watched it yet. I've just watched the trailer, but I was reading the history on it, and the whole thing was filmed on an iPhone, and this was like in 2015, which I think even now in the film industry it'd be kind of a little like it would get some looks, especially 2015. That was crazy. I mean, obviously they had audio outsourced and all that, but just the fact that a film was released on an iPhone I think that's crazy. So I would say Sean Baker definitely is a director I'm getting into and I respect so much.
What are some of your favorite films?
Favorite films. I'm gonna think of this. So Psycho, I know that's kind of a classic, but I it's more so not only just the movie itself, but kind of the reaction that it got afterwards. Like, I was reading that the movie Psycho literally had people like screaming outside of the theater. Like, people were terrified, and now looking at it, especially comparing it to movies today that are more gory and all that, it's amazing how a movie so non-violent could have such a reaction, especially for the time. So definitely Psycho. I was watching this the other day, The Taxi Driver. The cinematography and just the storytelling of that, especially the visual aesthetic, is amazing. What else? I was watching Desperado, so I think that's a really good film. I like that a lot. The Crow, that is a classic. I love that. The Crow. And let me see, am I forgetting anyone? I feel like I'm drawing a blank, so I might think of some later, but those are the few films that came to mind.
Nice, nice. And where can we see your work?
So most of my work is on YouTube. So it's youtube.com/Nick Agrinzone. And also I'm revamping my website as well, but for now it's www.agrinzonevisuals.com. So I'm planning on posting films there, but YouTube is mainly the way to go.
Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me, and best of luck to everything that will be coming for you. You're gonna do great, man. Just continue grinding and keep your foot on the gas.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing me on. Also, if you haven't watched this film, The Gold Watch, go watch it.
Thank you, man.